Yeah. Peggy's in the house.
Good morning, CSL Delaware.
Good morning.
Our focus for the month is the spiritual principle of diversity and the spiritual practice of inclusion. Abdul Baha, the head of the Baha faith, wrote, "In reality, all members of one human family, children of one heavenly Father." Let me read that again. In reality, all are members of one human family, children of one heavenly Father. Humanity may be likened unto the vari-colored flowers of one garden. There is unity in diversity. Each sets off and enhances the other's beauty. And Ernest Holmes wrote, "Behind all is a unity, through all is a diversity, saturating all is a divinity." From the screen, let us affirm this truth together with conviction. I know we are all rooted in the one life which produces endless diversity. Each person, plant, animal is a unique divine being. I therefore see, O my brothers and sisters worldwide, through the eyes of love. I practice loving inclusion.
So this year of spirituality and action, and this month that's dedicated to a particular action called inclusion, which begins by recognizing that diversity is a divine reality, that diversity is a principle, if you might say, that each and every one of us is a unique expression of the one. And so today, I want to focus on inclusion itself. But first, let's again readdress this thing called diversity. Let's in our own hearts in this moment say yes to diversity. We're saying yes to diversity, which is saying yes to the truth of the divine. So there is one source, one life, one presence, one power, and one infinite mind of infinite possibility. And from this possibility is produced, is created infinite variety. Infinite variety. So think in terms of the cosmos itself. No galaxy is alike, no star is alike, no planet is alike. And then you come down to planet Earth, which is its own unique configuration of minerals and elements and all of that kind of thing. And this particular planet then has 7 billion people. 7 billion people, each one unique. Now, if that doesn't throw you into a state of awe and wonder, I don't know what will. Think about it. Each one of us completely and totally unique, unrepeatable ways in which God shows up as each and every one of us. A unique configuration of DNA, personality, ethnicity, age, gender, spiritual perspectives, abilities, talents, national origin, sexual orientation. I could go on and on. So, how can we not possibly see that diversity is simply what is? Simply what is. It's part of the creative expression of the divine. And so imagine a bouquet of flowers. I love that concept in from the Baha'i leader who reminded us about the bouquet of flowers. And so imagine making a bouquet of flowers and just selecting your florist, and you have all this variety of flowers to choose from, and you can just choose one of each and make this amazing bouquet. And how beautiful it is. So, can we also take that appreciation of a beautiful bouquet of flowers and apply it to humanity? So that wherever we go, whoever we're with, it doesn't matter whether they have different perspectives than we do, we can embrace the beauty of that individual. So this is what this is asking us to open our hearts and have our hearts be as wide as the world. And this is not just here in our community or here in our nation. This is all over the planet, opening the heart to embrace the entire planet. So the interesting thing is, what is it then that causes us to think that we will ever find somebody like us? And yet, how many of us have been socialized to look for people who are like us to hang around with or to socialize with? Have you ever thought about that? Yeah. And what do we deprive ourselves of when we do that? To me, meeting and speaking with people, all different people, whether they're here in this nation or other parts of the planet, expands my mind. Anybody notice that? Yeah. It's like, wow, that's a whole different perspective. But it's to me, it helps me to expand, to grow, to see things from a different angle, and therefore enrich my life. So then, think about this. And yet, with this awareness now that we have, how many of us have experienced the frustration when you are not asked for your opinion or you are talked over? The frustration of asserting your opinion only to be dismissed or discounted. The annoyance when people assume that you are less committed to your work because you're a mother. The pressure to be superhuman just to fit in. The anxiety of sharing your personal life around somebody of a different sexual orientation. The anxiety of how others will react to your disability or to your appearance. The awkwardness when people assume that white colleagues are in charge. The exasperation when others assume that you don't have skill or ambition because of your age. All of these experiences happen because the practice of inclusion is not taking place. The practice of inclusion is missing. That's why this is so important for us to face this head on and to do the inner work. This is about inner work that's necessary to uncover those hidden biases that we have or tendencies that we have that are not inclusive. So exclusion, think about this. Exclusion does not happen in God. It's human, it's a human-made concept. It's a human-made concept. Inclusion is seeing as God sees, realizing the divinity in everyone around us. And inclusion is the awareness that we are all better for our differences. I was thinking back to the movie South Pacific, and there was a song there that had to do something with prejudice has to be carefully taught. It's not something that is natural for children. It has to be carefully taught. And even well-intentioned parents, and I'm one of them, who want their children to be open-minded, may still be teaching prejudice in kind of a very subtle way by the use of the term, don't talk to strangers. And I know, I can hear your protest right now, but we want our children to be safe. And yes, we do. We want our children to be safe. And do we want to carry the don't talk to strangers mindset with us into adulthood? I've had to look at that with myself. Where are the ways that that may be still living in me from the time my parents told me that? So the thing is, it's a mindset. It's in the subconscious mind. And it's therefore important for us, if we truly want to practice inclusion, if we truly want world peace, peace in our own lives, peace in our communities, and peace on our planet, that inclusion is the way. It's the way to go. Inclusion, when you think about it, is an act of love. I was thinking about the story of the Good Samaritan. And the Good Samaritan, it was a man who was robbed, who was left and beaten and left by the side of the road. And all of these so-called holy people and usually considered good people walked right by him. And yet the Good Samaritan, someone who was considered an outcast by much of society back then, saw the man, helped him, talked to him. He talked to the stranger, helped him up, took him to a local place where he could stay, gave money to the innkeeper to make sure that he was well cared for, and then went on about his way. That's someone who broke through that idea of don't talk to strangers, who is living from a deeper place, a deeper awareness that we are all one, no matter how different we are, no matter what our station in life is. So this practice of inclusion then is a letting go of the illusion of separation and the fear of differences. It's a realization that our differences are a good thing, that make our lives so much richer and fuller. And the thing about inclusion is that when it's put into practice in organizations, I was looking online, that productivity goes up 50%. And I was thinking, okay, that's really cool and that makes sense to me, but what's the mechanism that's going on there? And then I was thinking about the fight or flight response. If you feel like you're not included, the fight or flight response, protection, self-protection. But when we feel that we're included and that our voice matters, there's a relaxation response that takes place. We relax because we know that our voice matters, that we are a part of what's going on, and that we can add our own creativity to the mix. So that increase in productivity also means increase in creativity and innovation, well-being, a sense of belonging, a sense of safety. So let's choose in this moment to break down the mental construct, don't talk to strangers, for ourselves as adults. Do you want to play along with me here? Okay. In the South African spiritual philosophy of Ubuntu, it's U-B-U-N-T-U, Ubuntu. This is a philosophy that has guided the African societies for eons. And one who has Ubuntu, who has it, is one who lives from their divine essence, who lives from a heart of love, who understands the interconnectedness and the interdependence of all of us and all of life, and therefore is motivated into selfless acts of love. Isn't that beautiful? A person who has Ubuntu. So it's an actual metaphysical connection, is what I read, that's shared between people, connecting us all to each other. And in the 1990s, Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Desmond Tutu began to describe Ubuntu to the people as a way to help move from apartheid, separation, into a unified South Africa. And the proverb that was quoted quite often was roughly translated into our language as a person is a person through other persons. It's the message of interconnectedness, of oneness, of how we depend on each other, where we live interdependently. And it also inspired the use of forgiveness and reconciliation to unify the peoples of South Africa. So there's a practice that was recommended by Tracy Brown in her book, Stained Glass Spirit, Becoming a Spiritual Community Where Oneness Does Not Mean Sameness. And this practice is meant to break down the don't speak to strangers paradigm. And it goes like this. It starts with just acknowledging somebody. You don't even have to speak to them. You could pass someone on the street, or you could be standing in line waiting to check out, and you're with somebody and you look at them and you internally think namaste, which means what? Right. The divine in me recognizes or bows to the divine in you. So you could internally think namaste. Then you breathe and you notice the person's breath pattern and just breathe in rhythm with them. It's practicing oneness. And then silently say, Ubuntu. Can you say that? Ubuntu, which roughly translates, we are one. And make eye contact. And we know when we make eye contact with someone, even if it's just for a short period of time, that we are looking into the windows of their soul and we're reminding ourselves of our oneness. And then smile. So it's namaste, breathe, Ubuntu, smile, and make eye contact. Or some variation of that. That was what was recommended. It was roughly that was recommended by Tracy. But the idea is when we use these terms that are not part of our language, Ubuntu or namaste, we're helping to stretch ourselves into that awareness of our divinity, our uniqueness, and yet our oneness. It breaks down and dismantles whatever is left of that don't speak to strangers paradigm. So now that we've done the inner work, we're prepared then to practice inclusion more fully. And one of the best ways to practice inclusion is deep listening. Deep listening. Mystic St. Francis once said, "May I seek to understand more than to be understood. May I seek to understand more than to be understood." So we hear someone with our ears. That's when the sound of someone's voice hits our ears. Deep listening, though, is of the heart. It's the ears and the heart and the mind all connected together with a deep desire to understand. And so the big shift that's taking place in our culture then is moving away from just discussion to dialogue. And dialogue involves the decision to listen deeply to another person's perspective with the desire to understand where they're coming from. And it's like playing catch. When you think of playing catch, you throw the ball to one person and then they throw it back. It's not, one person just doesn't hold the ball the whole time. And that's what happens sometimes. That's when conversations break down, is when someone holds the ball and talks and talks and talks and talks and talks and has no interest in listening to the other person. And you can see how then you feel excluded because you're not being heard. So this is a back and forth. It's like playing catch, this thing called deep listening. And it's with the intention to understand more than to be understood, to be more interested in understanding another person's perspective. So deep listening, again, doesn't mean that we disagree, that we agree on it. It simply means that it's creating a space to ask clarifying questions, to get closer to understanding another person's perspective. It's not about winners and losers. And that's what happens sometimes when there's a big disagreement going on is each person wants to win, and of course if there's a winner then there's a loser. So this is really more like a win-win, this thing called dialogue, where the understanding, there's a deep desire to understand that is the overarching thing. So then it's an opportunity to learn, to expand our minds, to expand our hearts, and to feel a deeper connection with the other person, even if their viewpoints are very different, and to honor each other's uniqueness. The power of deep listening or dialogue. So, my friends, let us be people who have Ubuntu. Yes, people who understand that we are diverse and yet we are one. We are divine, uniquely divine beings, unrepeatable ways in which God shows up. And let us be people who love our neighbors around the world and love them for their uniqueness, appreciate their uniqueness. Let us value our interdependence, our oneness, and let us listen deeply to seek to understand more than to be understood. And let us master, therefore, the practice of inclusion. And I say to myself, may my actions speak louder than my words. Namaste, Ubuntu, and so it is.